Hello and welcome to another teaching by 119 Ministries. Our ministry teaches that the whole Bible is true and applicable for our lives today. If you would like to learn more about what we believe and teach, please visit us at testeverything.net. We hope that you enjoy studying and testing the following teaching. Prior to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot, a righteous man, is visited by two angels, or messengers of Yahweh. During this visitation, the two messengers receive some attention from men from Sodom. They expressed interest in having relations with these men, requesting Lot to bring them outside his house. In response, Lot offered his daughters instead. This is not only confusing to believers, but the skeptic of the faith sees this as a highly unethical response by Lot, which is concerning, because Lot is defined as a righteous individual. The skeptic rightfully asks, how is it righteous to offer one's own daughters to a sexually charged mob outside of his home? This is a very good and legitimate question. The answer lies in the testimony of the event itself. Let's read Genesis chapter 19. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly. So they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them." Clearly, the men that have spoken have revealed their interest in these men, meaning they are interested in other men. Keep that in mind as we continue. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly." So Lot proceeds outside, and he calls their interest and behavior wicked. "Behold, I have two daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please." Obviously, this is where many struggle. How could Lot, a righteous man, offer his daughters and say that these men can do anything they please to them? Well, for those paying attention to the situation, one might realize that Lot is a genius in the way that he handled this dilemma. Lot continues, "Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." These men, or angels, messengers, crossed over Lot's threshold into his house. Lot is responsible for their protection. However, Lot is also responsible for his daughter's protection as well. And he said this, "Behold, I have two daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please." Any person with any reasonable morals or ethics would question Lot's judgment and actions in this situation. Who would give away their daughters to a sexually charged mob for the sake of two strangers? However, Lot must have had a master's degree in psychology because he produced the exact result he desired. Believe it or not, Lot never intended for any harm to come to the messengers or his daughters. His offering of his daughters actually saved both the messengers and his daughters. How, you might ask? Let's back up in the story a little bit. Remember, the messengers were sent there to seek out one righteous man that could be spared. We read this in Genesis chapter 18. So the men turned from there and went towards Sodom. But Abraham still stood before Yahweh. Then Abraham drew near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within this city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it?" Abraham continues this discussion with Yahweh and narrowing it down to 10 righteous men. The men, the messengers or angels, had already turned and went toward Sodom, looking for righteous men. So these men found Lot, and Lot is being tested to see if he is indeed righteous. Lot has a responsibility to protect both the messengers and his daughters. But how is it that Lot offering his daughters to these men is considered a righteous act? It is in this question that both the character and brilliance of Lot is revealed. Whereas most reading this text only see Lot as offering away his daughters as if he cared nothing for them, quite the opposite is true. Lot knew that when the men spoke, they revealed their interest for men, not for women. That is a key understanding. So, almost mockingly, Lot offered them not men, but his daughters, right after calling their tendencies, interests, and behaviors wicked. They reacted exactly how Lot wanted. They would have been a lot happier if Lot offered them up sons instead of daughters. The offering of daughters simply angered them to no end. Remember, Lot wanted to protect both the messengers and his daughters. So what he did by offering the mob his daughters was to shift the mob's attention and interest of lust for the messengers to the hatred and anger toward Lot, so that they would completely forget about the messengers and the mob could have cared less about the daughters. Let's continue reading and see this play out. Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 through 11. But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." Then they pressed hard against the man Lot, and drew near to break the door down. This is how righteous Lot was. He traded his own safety for the safety of the others in his house. Lot's words may have been confusing and seemingly unrighteous. But once we understand the situation, how Lot psychologically manipulated the mob, we realize that Lot's interests and motives were pure. We then realize that Lot is indeed the one righteous man in Sodom, and the messengers realized this as well. Abraham asked for Sodom to be spared if 10 righteous men were found by the messengers in the city. Lot and his family were the only ones found, him and his house. The messengers witnessed all of this and quickly realized Lot's selfless act. It was then that the messengers saved Lot from certain destruction, after Lot intentionally angered this mob to an uncontrollable degree, and Lot proved himself to be righteous and selfless. The messengers then stepped in and saved Lot, thus showing all along that no one was ever really in any harm. It was all a test to see if Lot would step up to the plate. Genesis chapter 19. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out, groping for the door. How many of us would step in the front lines like Lot did, intentionally attempting to bring harm to himself, just to save men that he doesn't even really know? We hope that this has offered some perspective on why Lot seemingly offered his daughters to a wicked mob wanting to do harm. Once we see what Lot is really doing, it is clear that he knew that the mob would not take his offer of his daughters seriously, but instead become violently angry, thus redirecting their attention to only Lot and turning their previous sexual interest into a violent anger, thus protecting the rest of Lot's house at Lot's expense. May we all be as selfless and righteous as Lot. We hope that this study has blessed you, and remember, continue to test everything. Shalom.
It is because of you, our generous supporters, who make it possible to offer these high-quality teachings completely free of charge. If you feel led to support 119 Ministries so that we can continue this effort, please visit testeverything.net and click on the Support 119 tab. Learn how you can partner with us to take the whole Word of God to the nations.